Hello, my beautiful humans. I am Amanda Panacea, and I'm really excited that you're here today so that I can go through why I created the Adrenal Revolution program, what it entails, and all of the different modalities that I've combined over the years to finally get to the point where I feel ready to actually create this program. If you are anything like me, you are constantly learning and constantly evolving. And whenever you try to sit down and create something, you realize, oh, wait a minute, I can make this better. I just learned something new. And you start to get to a point where you're like, how am I ever going to finish this project? Because I keep wanting to add more things to it. It's like they say with paintings and artists, a painting is never finished, it's just abandoned. And so I finally feel, after 37 years, that I've reached a point where I can really actually create an amazing program that's going to help walk other women through why we reach a point of breakout or breakdown and burnout and adrenal fatigue. I combine a lot of different modalities. I have a license in mental health counseling. I have been in practice and working for over 12 years now. But then I also have a master's of science degree in functional medicine and nutrition. I am certified in life coaching, EFT tapping, and I've taken countless other courses and certifications, including things like Mind Body Masters and using German New Medicine, Mind Body Spirit Release, countless functional medicine, weekend courses, and things like that that have just really helped me to get a broad understanding of what is actually going on physically, energetically, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually for women like us, and why we are drawn to that chaos and that busy lifestyle and hustle culture and achieving and never really feeling like we're finished or like we're good enough. And so I really hope you enjoy this presentation. It's just going to be a bit about the adrenals, and then it's going to go into details about the program and everything that you'll be learning in it. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, so I'm calling this presentation, or this program really, the Adrenal Revolution, because when I first got sick, or when I first started having symptoms of burnout and exhaustion, I went to see a functional medicine doctor, and they told me that I had adrenal fatigue. You may have heard by this point that adrenal fatigue does not exist, which we're going to go into why people say that, as well as what that actually means in the program and a bit in the presentation, because the adrenals are responding appropriately to the messages and the signals from the pituitary, the hypothalamus, and the nervous system. So I'm calling it the Adrenal Revolution because I think other people will relate. And I would love to work with a woman who maybe just started researching and found adrenal fatigue and is like, oh, this is me. This makes perfect sense. So first, what even are the adrenals? The adrenal glands sit right on the top of the kidneys in the back. And they secrete quite a few different hormones. For the sake of this presentation, I'm keeping it short. We're just going to be looking at adrenaline, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. These are responsible for giving you that surge of energy when you go into that fight or flight response. They help to increase blood flow to muscles, the lungs open. If you're familiar with an EpiPen, it is a dose of epinephrine, which they give to people who are going into anaphylactic shock, because it opens up the airways. It stops all of the inflammatory processes. And the adrenals also release a bit of dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter that helps us with motivation. Aldosterone is a really important hormone for mineral balancing, in particular sodium and potassium balance in the blood, which are some of our electrolytes. When it's low, you may feel dizzy, you may have a head rush, crave salts, frequent urination is common. Cortisol is the most famous, of course, and well-known hormone that the adrenals release. It helps us to have energy and to wake up in the morning. Cortisol is anti-inflammatory, so it does slow the inflammatory response. It helps us to maintain our blood pressure, regulate our metabolism, increases our blood sugar, and cortisol is on a circadian rhythm with the sun and darkness. It allows for other hormones, or it sends messages to other hormones what time of day it is and when to be produced. So we'll get into how circadian rhythms and light are really important for the secretion of cortisol at the right times. However, cortisol is also released in response to a stressor. So it's on a circadian rhythm, plus we can release more in response to a stressor. Most cells have cortisol receptors. So this is super important because any type of stress, physical, mental, emotional, perceived, imagined, made up, that is going to impact most cells in the body because most cells have a cortisol receptors. And then lastly, DHEA and androgenic steroids, which DHEA is the precursor to estrogen and testosterone. DHEA is also shown to have in a good balance ratio with cortisol. People will have less instances of depression, anxiety, PTSD, because DHEA waits for cortisol to come down. So if cortisol is constantly high, DHEA is not going to get the message to be produced. Some also look at DHEA like a youth hormone because we do produce less and less of it as we age. So how does the body actually respond to stress? So I mentioned stress is physical, it is emotional, psychological, can also be toxin or biotoxin induced. It can also be imagined or completely made up, or you could be stressed from ruminating about the past. Your stress response system responds the exact same way to stress if it is any of the above. So if you almost got hit by a car, you know what that feels like, stressor. If you remember something difficult or traumatic that happened to you, you can feel your body responding to that memory. It's not happening in the current present tense, but you can still elicit that stress response. If it's anticipated, like you have to have a really hard conversation with your partner or your boss, or if it's imagined, if you feel like somebody's mad at you or you feel like somebody was talking bad about you and you misheard them, you're going into that stress response in regards to something that may have not even happened. The fight or flight response, this is what most people are familiar with. It's part of the sympathetic branch of the nervous system, which is very fast acting and it moves along very fast neurons, which basically means that it happens without us even knowing it. Our brain has a negativity bias, and it is like this for survival. So when you are feeling, or if you're thinking about the worst case scenario, that's actually a normal human way of thinking because we are biologically wired to see the bad. It takes practice to get out of this pattern of thinking. So if you think about why would this be? In the woods, let's say you're walking through the woods, you're going to be able to see a snake much faster than you would be able to see a bird. Your body or your brain is going to be able to pick up on what a snake looks like much faster than a bird. Why? Because a snake could kill you, a bird most likely will not. The sympathetic nervous system activates what is called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or the HPA axis, and then a cascade of events occur physically. So just like I mentioned, your body is designed to respond to stress, and we have a negativity bias for survival. The adrenal glands are only the A in the HPA axis, which is involved in this whole stress response. So the adrenal glands are not usually to blame for the reason you feel so crappy or burnt out or exhausted, because the adrenal glands are responding to what the pituitary is telling them, and the pituitary is responding to what the hypothalamus is telling them. And the hypothalamus, which we will see in a bit, is in a part of the brain called the limbic system. The limbic system is, like some people will call it, the reptilian brain. It's in the very back of the brain. And the limbic system is, the whole design of the limbic system is to keep you safe for survival. And so every memory of every bad thing or every difficult thing or scary thing that's ever happened to you, that memory gets stored in parts of the limbic system. And so as you age and mature, your vision or your senses, your smell, your touch is filtering reality through the limbic system. And the limbic system is looking for every little piece of information, and it is trying to remember if these things in your current reality were ever a part of something very difficult or traumatic or stressful. So when something bad happens to you, your subconscious will take a snapshot of everything around you. So whether you were, let's say you were 5 years old, your parents got in a huge fight, somebody threw a glass and it shattered, and you were terrified. You would remember maybe that it was fall. There was leaves falling outside. Maybe you remember that your mom was wearing a red sweater. Maybe you were eating a grilled cheese at the time. Maybe your dog came up to you and was licking your feet, trying to get the grilled cheese from you. Your subconscious takes a snapshot of this, and then the next time you're eating a grilled cheese or the next time your dog comes and licks you, you may have some sort of physical reaction because your limbic system is remembering, your subconscious is remembering, the last time we were in this situation and these things were around us, we were really scared and we had these physical reactions in the body. It was dangerous. We felt unsafe. And so then you could start to think, maybe I'm allergic to cheese, or maybe I'm allergic to dairy, or maybe then you develop an allergy to your dog. And those things can be tracks and triggers for future events that may be completely harmless. But because your subconscious is designed to keep you safe and your species to survive, that is how it works. So then these are the actual physical mechanisms or biochemical mechanisms that stimulate that stress response. So let's say we are walking down the street and there is a big dog running towards us, not on a leash. Without even cognitively thinking about it, your hypothalamus stimulates the pituitary gland by releasing corticotropin-releasing hormone. The pituitary gland secretes adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH. I'll just keep it at ACTH. And then ACTH stimulates the adrenal glands to produce the hormone corticosteroid about 10 minutes after. So this is already, the whole stress response is underway very, very quickly, less than a second. Cortisol then enables the body to maintain steady supply of blood sugar. Balanced blood sugar levels help to cope with the prolonged stressor and also help the body to return to normal after. So if the adrenals are releasing all of their hormones, there's a negative feedback loop. So we don't make too much ACTH, but if the adrenals aren't responding, then ACTH goes up. So basically what that means is CRH tells the pituitary to release ACTH. ACTH tells the adrenals to release like the adrenaline, noradrenaline, etc., and then also cortisol. And then there is a negative feedback loop. So if we're busy still addressing the stressor and we need this cortisol to keep our blood sugar balanced and maintain energy, then we don't need any more ACTH. And so the longer this goes on, less ACTH we need. Or if cortisol drops and the hypothalamus is saying, nope, there's no more danger, or next there's a new danger, then the whole process will start again. So when we're in that stress response, most people know what fight or flight feels like. Our heart rate increases, our bronchial tubes in your lungs dilate, pupils dilate, muscles contract, saliva production is reduced. Many of the functions of digestion are stopped, and more glycogen is converted into glucose. The really, really important one here is that many functions of digestion are stopped. If you have any sort of digestive issues, always go to your nervous system, because if we're not in rest and digest, then we're not fully able to break down our food. The signals to make stomach acid and digestive enzymes are not, being signaled efficiently, because we are shutting down digestion because we have to run from the tiger or from the dog, or whatever the stressor is. We don't need to digest our food during that process. Also, the really important thing is muscles contract, which this is going to impact our locomotor system long-term and lymphatic system. If things are tight, then things are not flowing. So things can start to get stagnant and build up, and you can start to have circulation and impact circulation and lymphatic flow. And then the other thing that's really important is more glycogen is converted to glucose, because long-term chronic stress can lead to blood sugar issues, because the body constantly needs to be ebbing and flowing with balance with the food that we're eating and breaking down, and then converting it effectively. So cortisol is not a bad hormone. Like I said earlier, it is on a circadian rhythm, and it's actually anti-inflammatory. Cortisol is very much needed. Most cells in the body have cortisol receptors, and therefore it's going to impact many different functions. Secretion of the hormone is controlled by the hypothalamus and pituitary gland and the adrenal gland, which we already just went through. In the right amounts, like I said, cortisol is anti-inflammatory, and it will inhibit a cytokine storm. Cytokines are chemical messengers. You're probably familiar with them from 2020. Many cytokines are inflammatory, and a cytokine storm is too many of these inflammatory mediators. There's lots of research that show that certain types of cytokines actually can change your behavior, leading you to be more anxious or more isolated and depressed, or more angry and irritable. And then lots of different cytokines are related to different types of mental health symptoms and different types of chronic illnesses and diseases as well. Cortisol has a distinct rhythm and is regulated by the hypothalamus. This process is initiated by light stimulating a specialized group of retinal ganglion cells. So those are in your eye. A normal rhythm starts at midnight with very low or undetectable cortisol levels that build up overnight and peak first thing in the morning. The cortisol peak in the morning is anti-inflammatory, and this is called the cortisol awakening response. This is one of my favorite things that I've ever learned. I talk about this a lot, especially if you have a difficult time waking up in the morning, or you feel groggy, or you need coffee to get going. Getting in the sunshine first thing in the morning is absolutely life-changing. I went from being the type of person that can sleep in very late. I could probably have kept sleeping till like 2 p.m. sometimes. Even my mom said as a baby, I was a really good baby because I'd sleep until 10 a.m. And I went from having a really hard time waking up early. I would get up 3 minutes before I had to start my job. That's how slow in the morning I was. And I went from that to waking up at sunrise within about 3 months of really making sure I get that sunlight in the morning. Cortisol levels decline slowly throughout the day. Cortisol also helps to maintain blood sugar, so it's high enough so that you don't actually pass out. Cortisol also increases glucose in the bloodstream, enhances the brain's use of glucose, and increases availability of substances that repair tissues. This is also really important. Cortisol inhibits insulin production in an attempt to prevent glucose from being stored. And lastly, cortisol suppresses immune function, the digestive system, and the reproductive system, and the growth process. So we do not need to digest our food. We don't need to fight bacterial and viral infections and parasitic infections. We don't need to have babies, and we don't need to grow and develop if we're under immense stress. So that is really important to remember. Chronic stress impacts everything. Long-term high cortisol is going to leave you with the feelings of burnout and adrenal fatigue and exhaustion. Even after getting enough sleep, you're also going to experience weight gain, especially in the lower abdominal belly weight. Poor sleep, feeling exhausted during the day, and even more awake at night, like a wired and tired feeling. Anxiety, depression, burnout, elevated mental and emotional stress. Hair loss is also common. Irregular menstrual cycles, blood sugar imbalances, increased appetite, dependency on caffeine and stimulants, low libido, slower detox, breakdown of bone, as well as the collagen matrix that holds bones together. So it's going to leave you more prone to injuries. HPA axis dysregulation. Remember, this is all in a negative feedback loop. So high cortisol is going to bleed its way back to the other hormones as well. Racing thoughts and worry, and then frequent illness because high cortisol suppresses the immune system. So why is cortisol high or low? So there is some really interesting research, which I'm including in the program, that goes into how low cortisol is actually very, very uncommon. Because it's on a circadian rhythm, you might see it lower than normal, but like clinically low is actually pretty uncommon. So most of you will most likely be dealing with high cortisol. But again, in the program, we'll go into if it's low as well, because there will be a different approach. There are different levels, I guess you should say, of adrenal fatigue. So somebody who is still very wired and tired and go and can't turn off their thoughts, compared to someone who's in complete exhaustion and can't think at all, there's going to be different approaches taken. And because the program is a completely bioindividual program, as well as with individualized testing and consults with me and sessions with me, you don't need to have to worry about that. I will take care of all of that and teach you, no matter what your situation is, what to do about it. So in the program, we're going to be focusing on these reasons that cortisol is high or low: chronic physical, emotional, or perceived stress, malnutrition, high toxin load or acute exposures to toxins or biotoxins, lack of sleep, unresolved trauma, and living out of alignment. And because I'm extra cute, the 8 modules in the program are abbreviated adrenals. So I'm going to run through each of the modules with you. It's completely evergreen, and these are just some of the topics that are covered. Some of them are very lengthy topics that I could probably do an entire program on individually. So this program is not going to be like a 101. I know you all out there are incredibly brilliant women who can handle understanding all of these concepts, and you can take your time, as much time as you need. That's why I'm leaving the program with 6 months of coaching, so you can take your time if it's a little bit overwhelming. But I think that each of these topics are really important, which is why I included them, because you can't have a program about the adrenals and burnout without covering all of these bases. So without further ado, the A for adrenals stands for adrenals and awareness. I love this little GIF of this woman in the water. This is literally like bliss to me, to just be floating in water. I used to be a swimmer. So in this module, we're going to cover what the adrenals actually are. I'm going to go much, much more into depth about all of the hormones, how to actually lower high cortisol, because this is the most important thing we need to start doing right away because of the impact cortisol has on the body. I'm going to go into, does adrenal fatigue actually exist, and what do people actually mean when they say that? Mitochondria, which are the powerhouses of our individual cells. Some people will say adrenal fatigue doesn't exist. It's actually just mitochondria functioning, which I'm going to explain what that means. And I'm also going to explain why I don't fully agree with that either, as well as bioenergetics, because all of our cells are constantly vibrating. Nothing in nature is ever still. And I think introducing you to bioenergetics is important, since everyone will be doing a bioenergetic scan that gives a full picture of their energetic health. Bioenergetics is amazing because it's basically asking your body and your nervous system and your subconscious a question and getting a response. And I have been using bioenergetics for myself, for my family and friends, as well as for hundreds and hundreds of clients at this point. And it is eerily accurate every single time. I've been comparing it to the other few tests that you can choose from, like comprehensive lab work HTMA or hair tissue mineral analysis, and also Dutch tests. And every single time it is confirmed that the patterns that I suspect were going on were true. So that is where I start almost everyone. I'm going to go into more detail about the HPA axis, talking about the hypothalamus in more detail and why this is so important, because it is the kickstarter of the stress response. It's also in the limbic system, and it also is the kickstarter for the HPT axis, which is the thyroid. I'm going to explain what mind-body really means, why this approach is so important. Nervous system one-on-one, awareness and mindfulness, and then energetics one-on-one, which is slightly different than just bioenergetics. Energetics is going to get more into manifesting an alignment, which we'll cover in a later date. But this is kind of like a rundown of the most important topics in a short, digestible form, so you kind of understand where we're going in other modules. Module 2, drainage, detox, and downtime. So I think that this is important to include a lot of the physical things that are going on in the body, because I do think we have to take care of ourselves on a physical level. Now, taking care of yourself on a physical level is only one piece of the puzzle. Most people kind of stop here, and this is definitely where Western medicine is going to leave you, but they won't even go into as much detail as these modules. First on the list is psychoneuroimmunology, which is an entire field that studies the connection between the nervous system and our psyche, as well as our immune system, and also our endocrine system. Drainage pathways, detox do's and don'ts. This is not going to be like a how to detox anything course by any means. However, we'll get into in later modules how toxins and biotoxins and even internal toxins like metabolic disorder can impact your stress response. And so I do think it's important to cover. We're also going to look at gut health, blood sugar, the thyroid, how cortisol also impacts estrogen, which is going to impact your cycles and sex hormones, and how both of those also impact histamine. So the more burnt out you get, the higher your cortisol, the more allergies you're going to have, the less tolerant of high histamine foods, the less alcohol you can drink, et cetera, is going to start happening. We're also going to look at inflammation from a couple different angles, from a functional medicine standpoint, but also from a German new medicine perspective, which is going to be very different, as well as how pessimism is really important and mindset is really important for any and all of these things, especially inflammation. Slow down to speed things up. This is one of the mantras that I had to learn the hard way. I just went over how cortisol impedes a lot of different biological functionings like the immune system, detox, sex hormones, digestion. So when we start to actually slow down and take time off for ourselves and not constantly be working out, filling up our schedule, go, getting less sleep, always trying to be busy, when we slow this whole process down, it's actually going to speed up weight loss, detox, digestion. Your hormones are going to be much more balanced fertility-wise. So slowing down is super important. Movement, this is going to include exercise and how you don't need to do high-intensity interval training 24/7 to lose the stress weight. That's actually probably making it worse. Cold therapy and how to use it and how not to use it. Sleep, light, and circadian rhythms. This is like the most important module, so that'll be pretty lengthy. And I'm also going to give you a sleep guide. Real food. So again, with mitochondria health, mitochondria is very important, as you can see. Cholesterol, breakfast, caffeine and alcohol. What to freaking eat. I am not going to give you any sort of diet that you have to follow, although the program will be coming with personalized grocery lists, foods you can eat, as well as recipes that are going to help support your adrenals, as well as taking a picture into what the food intolerances were that came up on the bioenergetic scan, as well as taking consideration to some of the toxins that you might be resonating with as well, and also the nutrient and hormonal imbalances. So for example, if you were low in magnesium, there's going to be a lot of magnesium-rich foods in your list of things to buy at the grocery store. You in no manner need to follow exactly on here. I just thought it would be helpful to have, because some people do really enjoy that. Adrenal cocktails, you'll get a great list of adrenal cocktails. I tend to keep it simple. If you're anything like me, which I'm sure you are, the more complicated something is, the less likely I'm about to do it when I'm busy. So I keep mine super simple. Weight gain, stress fat, leptin resistance. This is a big topic if you are dealing with stress weight. This is probably the topic that I would be most excited about, because it's something that I struggled with, and I found some really amazing ways to help with this, as well as emotions and weight gain, and how certain types of emotional stress can actually lead to weight gain, going into German new medicine on this one. And then weight loss. I am not a weight loss expert by any means, by any way, shape, or form, but I have consumed probably more information on weight loss, especially related to burnout and adrenal stress. So I'm going to go into some information about that as well. Moving right along to energy and minerals. This is going to go into aldosterone, which is one of the adrenal hormones, and how that impacts our mineral status and electrolytes, how vitamins impact our mineral status, how stress impacts our minerals. And then I'm going to go into some of the really important minerals like calcium, magnesium, potassium, zinc, copper, iron, sodium, and salt. I'm sure you have heard that salt is really good for the adrenals. And I'm going to explain exactly why that is and ways that you can use that to your advantage. All right, next we have the nervous system. This is going to be probably the most lengthy presentation, or the most lengthy module, because this is really where a lot of my focus is on these days, because the nervous system connects to everything we've already talked about. The nervous system is responsible for the stress response, the hormonal status, the immune system. Our nervous system has a very particular way of connecting with the brain and certain organs. And we really need to understand the role that our thoughts play, and the role that the stress we put ourselves in impacts our entire psyche, nervous system, body, whatever you want to call it. This is where we're going to go deep into what the limbic system is, and why neuroplasticity and brain retraining programs work and are helpful, what internal and external stressors are. So we're going to touch base on certain toxins and how they impact the nervous system, environmental stressors like mold and mycotoxins, and how they impact the HPA axis, hormonal status, as well as like heavy metals and viruses that can latch onto nerve endings. Metabolic syndrome, which would be like an internal stressor, EMFs and grounding, and how to help with your bioenergetic fields and how to keep those healthy. Emotions and the role that they play for nervous system activation, or going into parasympathetic polyvagal theory, which is a theory about how our vagus nerves and how we emotionally and energetically go into different branches of our nervous system, energetics and frequencies. So this again is going to kind of pull us back to bioenergetic testing, as well as the role of our emotions, the psychological conflicts, our belief systems, and how that plays a role with whether we're in a chronic state of stress or not. A little bit about trauma. This is not going to be a trauma healing course. I like to look at trauma as big T and little t, and more so difficult events, difficult life events, because nobody doesn't have these. And the ACE studies, so all of the actual research, psychological and clinical research on how trauma impacts the physical body. And then one of my new favorite topics, German New Medicine or Germanic healing knowledge, how that is an actual blueprint for how these difficult life situations or perceived stressful situations actually impact our body in an exact way every single time, depending on the type of perceived stress. It is absolutely incredible. And in regards to the adrenals, it is one specific perceived stressor, and that is feeling like you got on the wrong horse, feeling like you went down the wrong path in life, and feeling like you're not where you're supposed to be. And so the heavy focus of the rest of the course is going to be coming to terms with where you are in your life, in the world, and in your body, and allowing yourself to live out of alignment and authenticity so that your adrenals no longer have to slow you down so that you can get on the right horse. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is with somatics. Somatics is something that helped me heavily in my journey because I was always incredibly future focused. Got to do this, got to do that, got a huge to-do list, got to get the next degree, got to learn this. And I was the type of person that always missed the moment. Using alcohol and drugs was one of the ways that I actually became in the present moment. And realizing that awareness, like step one, is how it helped me to break that pattern, which brings us to attachment and authenticity. So again, we're going to go more into polyvagal theory and explain attachment theory, which explains why people please or fawn or flock to the group. I'm going to bring up the chakras because the chakras, especially the throat chakra, this is where people sometimes are blocked when they tend to people please or fawn or flock because they don't have their own voice. They don't have their own thoughts and interests. They rely on the information they're getting from everyone else to determine if they're safe or not, if they can be themselves, authentic. And what happens is a lot of times people sometimes don't know who they truly are because I think about like when I was a teenager and I had crushes on boys, and I would find out what bands that they liked so that I could listen to those bands and start to understand and pretend to like them. And of course, I actually liked a lot of them. But that's how I would figure out like what was cool was by other people, or at least the boys I had crushes on. So that's my example, like when I was a teenager, but it's very common for people to do this as well. If you're familiar with the Enneagram model, I'm an Enneagram 5, which is very much so like I have to understand things and people and understand that it's safe and the dynamics between people before I can jump in and open up and be myself. And so we're going to go into blockages in especially the throat chakra, but then also the third eye chakra, maybe empathy, and how people tend to get really, really good at reading other people out of a trauma response, out of needing to understand if other people were in a bad mood when you were younger, so that you know if it's safe to talk about maybe what's hurting you. And then that, of course, the next bullet point, what's the difference between a trauma response and your intuition? Feeling to healing, feel to heal. We're going to go into what that actually means, how to actually do it. Something I struggled with was being incredibly shut down from my body and feeling like I didn't really feel much and didn't really have strong opinions about things, feeling like I could handle things, kind of like apathy and just like an existential depression almost, like whatever happened, happened and it didn't really matter. What is alignment? What does this even mean? Who am I and what do I want? We need to get super, super clear here because our subconscious loves when things are very specific. We need a direction to be going in so that we're not just floating around, responding to whatever comes our way. If we are going to manifest and attract more of the things we want, we need to know what direction that's going in. Stepping into your power, figuring out what that is. What do you enjoy? What is fun for you? And when was the last time you did anything fun? When was the last time you even felt like something was fun? A lot of times with burnout, you just don't feel those emotions anymore. You don't feel like anything is fun. And this is when I used to use drugs and alcohol to actually feel like things were fun. Again, manifesting. And then one of my favorite topics last, secondary gains. So all of the behaviors that you've accumulated throughout your life, there is a gain to it, even the negative ones. Maybe it's immediate gratification. Maybe it is attention from somebody. And this is not conscious. So please don't think that I'm going around saying that bad things have happened in your life or you're perpetuating bad things because you want attention from somebody. That's not what I'm saying. But just as an example, if you've ever seen a child start to hit that age 3, 4, 5, and they're learning kind of how to manipulate people, you may see a child screaming and crying and acting really hurt. And if nobody's paying attention to them, if everybody turns around, they eventually kind of stop crying, wait a minute, this isn't working. Whereas if somebody comes up to them and starts to give attention to them, and this obviously is if they're not actually hurt. If you can tell a child is trying to get your attention, and then you go and you start to talk to them and give them that attunement that they were looking for, everything is better. But children are fascinating to watch because you can kind of see them developing these subconscious manipulation patterns, because this is when you kind of learn how to do it. And I've caught myself doing things like this. Just knowing that being aware of them is the most important part, not feeling guilty about it, but just being curious, wonder where I picked that up from. I wonder how many decades I've been doing that. And then we're almost done here. So letting it go. So this is where the fun kind of comes into play. This is where I actually teach you the tools that have been really helpful for me to move some of these emotions out, move some of the old stuff out, but then also learning how to actually feel good in your body right now. Wellness and feeling good is not a future tense thing that you have to do A, B, and C to obtain. You can literally start to feel good in your body, in your mind right now. And I'm going to teach you how to tap into that. There's a lot of techniques listed here that you're more than welcome to research on your own. But there's a lot that I've learned behind the scenes from some of my mentors in the world of havening and trauma and somatics that I know you will not find on the internet, that have been really powerful for me and my clients that I've worked with. And then lastly, finding success in slowness. So this is going to be practical advice for recovery, just building from what we've already been doing. Masculine versus feminine energy, that trying to control versus letting it flow. Somatic presence, surrender. Surrender is the most important word you're going to learn here. And then finally, manifesting success, what it means to truly be attracting the success, the freedom, the fun, the carefree, playful person that you know that you are. So the program comes with 6 months of biweekly coaching. I am also going to be working on some bonus modules, but the word adrenals only had so many letters. And I think they're pretty hefty already. So we will see what happens. Maybe some special guests and speakers. So with the program, the full program, you get to choose 3 tests and 3 one-on-one sessions with me. Currently, I offer bioenergetic testing, HTMAs, or hair tissue mineral analysis, comprehensive labs. There is exclusions for certain states I cannot order, and then also a Dutch test. So I'm allowing 3 because some people may want to or already have labs from your doctor, or if you have health insurance, you can get those super cheap. So you can choose 3 out of the 4. I'm also going to be offering affiliate opportunities, and this is because I am a referral-based practice. My focus is to bringing my attention and the changes with the people I'm already working for, the transformations. I don't want to be spending time or money on marketing, and I trust that the people that I work with are also going to bring in like-minded women just like yourselves. I've had a lot of success with just word of mouth already in the past, and I trust that you all will bring more amazing women my way and just really build this community. And then I'm also going to be allowing you all to have access to the module updates for life. I am a totally different person than I was a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And I know that I'm going to continue evolving. And so I don't want you to feel like if I learn something new or if I get a new certification that you're going to be missing out, because you definitely will not. The one-on-one sessions are going to be good for an entire year. You'll also continue to have discounts for any additional testing, and then discounts for thousands of different practitioner brands, plus all of the products and discounts that I'm going to be offering in the course. In certain modules, there's certain apps and trackers, or there's also certain products that I really love, as well, of course, as the discounts for the actual testing. So I am always open for questions and suggestions. I appreciate you giving me grace on this, because this is my first group program and I tend to be a little, how do I say this, technology challenge. So please reach out to me if you feel like there's something you'd like to see in the program that I might be missing, or if you feel like maybe on social media I was talking about a topic and you didn't see it on here and you'd like it to be included, send me a DM or an email. All right, everyone, I am just so thankful that you sat through the whole presentation. That was a little longer than I thought it was going to be. So as you can see, I have a lot to talk about. This program is going to be super dense, and I know that it's going to help you coming out of the feeling like I've done everything right and nothing is working, and get to a place where you actually can trust in your body and can trust that you're on the right path, and loosen up the rigidity that is keeping you stuck and keeping you exhausted, and open up to receive more and to let your life flow more and to have a lot more fun. So thank you all so much for listening. I will talk to you shortly. Bye.